Hello everyone. Today I am going to deliver my lecture on returns to scale. Dear friends, before going to deliver my lecture on returns to scale, we should have to know about what actually the production is. Production in economics, it is nothing but conversion of raw materials into finished goods, or transformation of inputs into output. As we know the fact that to produce any of articles in the economy or any of service, we need of various factor inputs. Such factor inputs are termed as factors of production. Mainly in economics, there are 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and organization. Here, in other words, we can also describe production as a very relationship between 2 important variables. They are factor inputs and factor outputs. My dear friends, after knowing about what actually the production is, we shall go for production function. Production function is nothing but a very functional relationship between quantity inputs and quantity outputs. It reveals the fact that at what extent quantity of inputs will impact on quantity of output, in the sense that as we keep on increasing quantity of inputs, how it does impact on quantity of output. Say for example, as you use more and more of labor, capital, and organization as well capital, and how does it impact on total quantity of output. Say for example, rising of output from 10 units to 20 units, 20 units to 30 units likewise. Under production function, we have 2 forms of production function. They are short-run production function and long-run production function. Short-run production function explains the fact that the functional relationship between factor inputs and output in the short run. Here, the condition is that in the short run, there is no privilege for the firm to vary all of the factor inputs, and the firm has to restrict its variation of inputs only for 1 or the 2 factor inputs. Say for example, there are 2 factor inputs like labor and capital. In the short run, we need to keep constant of another factor input, and we have to vary only 1 factor input. Say for example, by using more and more of labor, by keeping constant the factor inputs like land, when we go on increasing the labor force on the same factor input, that is land, up to a certain point of time we may get more of return, and after that return may vary. So what we are showing this relationship in the short run, it becomes a short run production function. It can be expressed in the form of an equation like Q is equal to, or QP is equal to F of L1 and K. Here L1 indicates only the labor input is increasing and capital is remain constant. And after that, I told you that there are 2 production functions, short run and long run. We had already the short run production function. The long run production function, here the firm will be having enough privilege to vary all the factor inputs. Say for example, land, labor, capital, and organization, it has to be varied in the long run, because as economy grows, people's wants, desires, and even other factors will vary. To meet such variations, the firm has to use more of land, more of labor, more of capital, and even organization. So as it keep on increases all the factor inputs in a very equal doses, or a very doses, how does it impact on factor output or quantity of output? It shows the relationship of a long run production function. Okay, in the long run, as I said before you, all factor inputs varies. A very theory or a law, it has been developed in economics with respect to the same is law of returns to scale. Here the law of returns to scale explains the fact that as the firm keep on increases each and every factor inputs at an equal dose, how does it impact on quantity of output or production? And it also explains a very important relationship between factor inputs and factor outputs in the long run. According to Roger Miller, he describes the fact that law of returns to scale is nothing but the quantitative relationship or a very functional relationship between factor inputs and output in the long run when all factor inputs varies at an equal doses. To justify the law has several assumptions. See, each and every law is based on certain assumptions. Without law, it becomes very barren. This is all the known fact. Likewise, this law of returns to scale is also based on certain assumptions like all factor inputs varies and the enterprise remain constant, the technology used in the process of production remain constant, and all factor inputs varies at an equal dose. Quantities of production will be measured in terms of quantities, and the law is very applicable only for the long run, and the firm is operating under perfect competition. These are the very assumptions which the law has been based or made up of. And after knowing about this assumption, we shall go for the explanation of the law. It requires a very good table and a diagram. See, if you look at the diagram, what I have written over here, the first column describes us the scale of inputs, the second column is total revenue, and third is marginal revenue, and finally the fourth column related to the stages. As the firm uses more and more of factor inputs at an equal dose, see, at the first time 1 worker plus 2 acres of land, in the second time 2 workers per 4 acres. Likewise, the firm keep on increasing a very equal doses again and again. The total revenue increases at a first stage at an increasing rate. Here, before going to explaining this table, I will tell you what actually the increasing rate of return is. The law has 3 major stages of production: increasing returns to scale, diminishing constant returns to scale, and diminishing or decreasing returns to scale. Increasing returns to scale means the total production rises at an increasing rate as the firms keep on increases an equal quantity of factor inputs. Here, the major reason for an increasing returns to scale is indivisibility of factor inputs and division of labor. In the first stage, or at the first stage, it becomes very inevitable for the firm to have very immense factor inputs. Sometimes the firm may not possible to have very little size of factor inputs. Firm has to have a very larger inputs. So with that purpose or reason, the first stage operates. See, if you look over the total revenue column, at first 1 worker plus 2 acres of land, the total quantity produced is 8 units, and later it has increased to 17, and later on 27. It means that total output is rising at an increasing rate. It is very clear from the table that in the first stage marginal return is increasing. Since marginal return is increasing, total output rises at an increasing rate. I already told you about why it happens. The major reason for happening of this stage is indivisibility of factor inputs and division of labor. A very operation of division of labor takes place in the first stage. In the second stage, that is constant returns to scale. Constant return to scale means as the firm uses or keep on increasing the same factor inputs on same plot of land or different plot of land, the output what it has yielded or it is going to yield will rise at a constant rate. See, the third column says under marginal return column, in the second stage total produce is increasing at a constant rate. It was 27, it has increased to 38, later on 49. It means that at a rate of 11 units in the second stage it has increased. And when we come to the third stage of returns to scale, that is decreasing returns to scale, since the marginal return or produce diminishes, the total product or total return starts to rise at a diminishing rate. Here the firm will not incur any loss or negative shade, because in the long run firms will be having enough time to adjust its output to its input. The very reason for the operation of decreasing returns to scale is much of diseconomies of scale. Under first stage, firm enjoys much of economies of scale. Economies of scale means advantages derived from large scale production, or when firm expands its units at the initial stages, the firm gets more and more of advantage. Later on in the final stage, instead of getting more of return or advantage, the firm will incur or firm will face different challenges. With such challenges, the return yield it becomes less and less. So this is what we have to see on table. If you go through with the diagram written over here, the OX axis measures scale of production or inputs, and OY measures marginal returns. See, in the first stage, from point P to point Q, it indicates that increasing returns to scale. Why it happens? In the first stage, as the firm uses more and more of workers as well land as factor input, the marginal return starts to rise. That's why it is supposed to say increasing returns to scale, and point Q onwards to point R, the stage is constant returns to scale. The reason I already told you why it happens. The very reason for the operation of constant returns to scale is, in the second stage, advantages as well disadvantages becomes equal to one another, so that the firm's utility or production level rises at an equal rate. And from point R onwards to point S, it denotes that decreasing returns to scale, wherein it is very much clear that the firm enjoys not much of its factor inputs, because MR starts to fall, 10 to 9, 9 to 8. This is what about the returns to scale concept. I hope you understood very clearly that why in the long run law of returns to scale operates. We had negative returns in the law of variable proportion, but here we don't have such part, that is negative returns, because under law of returns to scale there is no point of having negative return, because as I already told you, the firm will be having very much privilege or opportunity to get change its factor inputs to its output. I hope you understood. I will meet you with some other topic in the next time. Thank you very much.